Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Rob Simpson here for a Simmers morning skate, which, of course, in this case is a Simmers summer skate. And it's my pleasure to bring in an old friend, Jimmy Murphy, who is now with the Eye Test podcast with Pierre Maguire. Pretty cool on the Sick network, Sick Media, SICK. It's right behind your head. If you go like this, Murph, there you go, the Sick podcast.
Yeah.
Pretty good stuff. You just recorded a new one yesterday. I think you talked to Luke DeCock from
We did.
covers the Carolina Hurricanes. All right, Boston Bruins. I know Canucks fans, so they do not like the Bruins. I'm not sure the Bruins have a feeling one way or another about the Canucks, but you can understand 2011.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, right now, we get the feeling that maybe Florida is on the hatred list for Bruins fans because they got knocked out of the Panthers, beat them last two playoffs.
Correct. Yeah. They have eliminated the Bruins in two consecutive seasons. And of course, 2 seasons ago, Simmer was the big one just because of the historic regular season the Bruins had and all the records they broke. And they were the essential, Stanley Cup favorite heading into that series. But credit to Paul Maurice. He caught lightning in a bottle there, and he just rolled with it. They took it all the way to the Stanley Cup final that year, got bounced by Vegas, and of course this year went through the Bruins again, this time in the second round, and went on to win the Stanley Cup. But yeah, I think the thing is with the Panthers, Simmer, and you referenced 2011 in Vancouver there. I think that, and I've heard Bill Zito mention this actually because he was Tim Thomas's agent, if you recall. That he tried to model that Florida team as he started to construct it, model it a bit like the 2011 Boston Bruins, where they were, brute force, power forward types, really took the body, but could also score, strong defense, and of course, amazing goaltending from Tim Thomas, and they got that from Bobrovsky in Florida. But I think that's the issue with the Bruins is the Bruins fans rather, they see a lot of what they miss about their team in the Florida Panthers, and I think they're a little jealous over it.
Yeah, outstanding balance. And by the way, last year, not only did it also hurt because it was our pal Patrice Bergeron and, if I'm not mistaken, David Krejci's last game as Boston Bruins when they got knocked out last year, surprisingly, it's always hard. It kind of reminds me of 06 when Steve Yzerman, they got bounced by the Edmonton Oilers in the first round, 8 seed against the 1. It was like, oh, career's over. It was just kind of happens like that. With that in mind, 2 consecutive ousters at the hands of the Panthers. How's Monty hanging in there? Is there pressure? Is there talk? Is Jim Montgomery, because of his regular season success, everything's honky-dory?
I think, look, I think if you go back, let's go back to the first round of that series, because you look at the regular season, Simon, nobody had the Bruins doing as well as they did again this year and racking up the points that they did, finishing where they did in the standings. A lot of people thought, again, just like they thought heading into that historic year the year before, that they were going to be on the peripheral, battling for a wild card spot. And again, that wasn't a case. And they, I think in the eyes of a lot of people, overachieved. So I think Montgomery gets a lot of credit for that. However, when things kind of went haywire against the Maple Leafs in the first round and they blew that 3-1 series lead and you're heading into game 7, I think his job was on the line there. And if it wasn't on the line right in that moment, I think it was going to put him on a very short leash heading into this series. So if they had not won game 7 against Toronto, I think there'd be a lot more question marks around him. Right now, I think he's in a good spot. However, that being said, you could look at it from a flip side, though, and say, well, now they have a better roster than they had this past season after the additions they made in the offseason, what Don Sweeney did. So people could look at it and say, okay, Don Sweeney has filled some of the needs that they needed there, whether it's Zadorov, bringing him in the top 4, nice physical presence, somebody on the left side that can alternate with Hampus Lindholm and maybe complement Charlie McAvoy, which is something I think they missed a lot in the playoffs. And then he gets them a top 6 center in Elias Lindholm. So I think you can kind of look at it in 2 different ways that maybe, okay, he has a better team, so they should be better. But at the same time, I think people still they're satisfied where he's at. Now, all that goes out the door if they come out of the gate, come American Thanksgiving, they're not even sniffing the wild card, or I would say they have to be in the wild card at least for people not to ask questions. So we'll see how the first quarter of the season goes, but I think for now, Jim Montgomery is safe.
Well, you brought up a handful of topics there. By the way, the Bruins have cornered the market on Lindholms. You've got Hampus on the blue line. Elias, 7-year deal.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I want to get into that with you.
They get him from the Canucks. They get free agency. Zadorov, a new Big Z, obviously not Zdeno Chara, but a new Big Z who he is a beast, by the way. I was impressed. Talk about both of those new acquisitions and the contracts, what you thought of the length, what you thought of the deal, and what you thought of the acquisitions in general. I mean,
well, look, I think it makes them better. Yeah, there's no doubt that both these signings make them better. No doubt at all. And I'm not taking that away. I'm not trying to be a Sally Downer here, but you brought up the sticking point for me, and that's the term. And with both guys too. I just think at their age, they're on the other side of 30 now. You never know what can happen once you start to get to that age. And I just, that's a lot. But, part of me does empathize with Sweeney and saying, well, unfortunately for any GM, that's the way the market goes right now, that a lot of times in order to secure these contracts, you're going to have to go the extra mile on a term, and you're going to have to give these guys more security, whether it's through the term or, as we see, he also got a no movement as well. So I think that is the negative part of those signings, but in the immediate, they're great moves. However, the only thing I want to caution people from, specifically Bruins fans who think all of a sudden, they're going to compete, they're Stanley Cup contenders right away, is I think on a Stanley Cup contender, Lindholm is a 2 center. I don't think he's a number 1 center on a real legit Stanley Cup contender, whether that's the Florida Panthers, whether that's the Edmonton Oilers, the Colorado Avalanche. I think he's a number 2 center on a real contender. And I do think that the Bruins still lack that. That being said, I think it does give a little more space and a little more rest in games for somebody like a Charlie Coyle. It also gives you the alternative to you getting Matthew Poitras back, so he can slot in the middle as well. Maybe you push Zucker out to the wing. So it gives them more options, but I don't think they still have a bona fide number 1 center in what they lost when Patrice Bergeron left.
Right. By the way, don't make them older than they are. They won't appreciate it. They're both almost 30. So Lindholm.
Yes, you're right.
Lindholm in about 4 months. And then Big Zed, the new guy, in about, I think it's in April, he turns 30. Yep. But I know what you're saying. One will be 37 and the other will be 30, almost 35 when these deals wind down.
And here's the other thing too, Simmer. Now you saw him a lot more than me this past season and in the past couple seasons, because you're based out there in Vancouver and Seattle. I just question too, and this is one thing, if I was a GM, I'd always wonder, and I'm sure that Don Sweeney did his diligence, I would imagine, but yeah, I haven't, so I don't know. Why so many teams in such a little time? And sometimes that's a red flag to me. I've heard some things. I think Zadorov is a solid player, but I've heard some things that I'm not going to repeat here, that make me pause a bit and say, okay, well, that's another reason. Do I want to lock somebody in to such a long-term deal when he's kind of bounced around a bit for the last year or two? So those are some question marks I have. But that being said, like I said, the market dictates a lot of this. So you can't lay it all on the general manager who signs them. I just think it's the way it goes right now in the NHL. The other thing I'll say though too about Zadorov, I do love, and I started off, is having that physical presence. Also having a guy. Now, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. He seems to have a good shot from the point.
Yeah, seems to get pucks through.
Exactly, which to me is okay. Let's say you pair him with McAvoy. One of the things they've been trying to get McAvoy to do, but it's just not him, is take that blast from the point to really rifle it in and not always look for the pass, not look to pinch. Well, now McAvoy maybe doesn't have to do that. Maybe he can just be himself. Maybe he can pinch. Maybe he can pass it back to Zadorov for the blast from the point. So it kind of gives you more options there on defense and on the blue line, and maybe specifically on the power play. And it kind of frees up McAvoy, which, a lot of people are hard on him about his performance in the playoffs. I just think it was a matter of him trying to overcompensate for something the Bruins didn't have. And now maybe they have it in Zadorov.
Yes, and probably a second unit penalty killer as well. And well, you've kind of touched on this a couple times. Depth and who's kind of around your bottom six.
Yeah.
Is kind of like the no name. It was like the old Miami Dolphins. Was it the no name offense?
That was before me, man.
Yeah, a long time ago. It kind of feels like that. Like, who the
Yeah.
hell are these guys?
Well, I think it's kind of it's almost trademark Bruins though, Simmer, and you
Yeah.
covered this team and you've followed them for that's what they love. They love the mishmash. We'll just call them a mishmash down there in the bottom six, and even maybe on their third pairing as well on D. That's kind of been their trademark, and they've got a lot of guys that now. Can they do it another year? A lot of guys did play maybe above their potential, above their caliber last year. And I look at one guy, like I think the perfect example is Morgan Geekie. This is a guy that I thought really became kind of a Swiss Army knife for them in the middle six. And I think he can do that again. So I think they have some pretty useful guys there. I think the other thing too, and the reason maybe they didn't go and get one more guy maybe on the wing to put in that middle six area there would be they want to bring some of the young guys in. I think they need to know what do we have in Fabian Lysell. This is to me, he's a first rounder from 2021, 21st overall pick. He's been up and down. He's had a lot of work ethic issues, battled some injuries, but he had a nice second half last year. And if not for another injury, probably would have got up to the NHL down the stretch run and been on the playoff, roster. So I think that was purposely done to kind of let some of these young kids filter in, see what they have there. And then, you know what, maybe halfway through the season, if they don't pan out, they'll go out and acquire somebody.
I'm struggling a little bit, Murph, with Matt Grzelcyk moving on because his father, John, has been part of the Bull gang, driving the Zambonis since the back Boston Garden days. So it seems a little odd that Grzelcyk, well, dad's alone now again, working at the Garden. All right, most important position on the ice, the two-headed monster. There's no more Allmark. It's Jeremy Swayman. By the way, talked to him for quite a while at the All-Star festivities in Toronto this last go around, and what a great kid. I mean,
yeah, he's got a good head on his shoulder.
Yeah, from Anchorage, from I think he's from Anchorage. I know he's from Alaska. I think it is Anchorage. Great kid. And then Korpisalo comes over. So what do we think? I mean, I don't think there's any question that Swayman's prepared and ready and go with a number one instead of this duo thing that we've seen.
So yeah, I agree with you. But then my question is, why take Korpisalo and why take on that contract? And yes, I know that 25% of it is being picked up by the Senators, but wasn't the original goal of trading Allmark to free up some of the money they were going to have between the pipes? Let's say we all know Swayman's going to sign. So, but we don't know what the number is going to be. We don't know what the term's going to be. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I don't know, he comes in at 7.25 a year.
Woo!
Okay. Let's say that. I think that's on the low end. Because from what I hear from pretty good sources that he's looking for 8x8. He wants 8 times 8. Okay. And so, but let's say he comes in at 7.25. Now we've got, let me just double check so I don't screw this up. You got Korpisalo in at 3. So you've got 10.25 locked up between the pipes. If you kept Allmark, you would have had 13. Okay, so you're saving 2.5. Still, though, it just, I don't get, combined with the salary and the age and the track record of Korpisalo, I get that they love Bob Essenzer and he's worked some magic with guys, and nobody's gonna deny that. And I love goalie Bob just as much as the next person. He's a great guy. He's a brilliant goalie coach.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's the goaltending coach. Yeah,
but he's not the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I don't think he's gonna part the seas here and turn Korpisalo into a Vezina Trophy winner. I don't get that move, especially given that they've been hyping up Brandon Bussey, the kid in Providence, who's now coming up. And if they bring him up and he's on the NHL roster, needs to clear waivers to go back down. So I don't understand that move. That to me is not. that's more of a question mark to me than Swayman not being signed yet, because I just think sometimes contracts drag out. It is what it is. I'm not worried about him getting locked up, but that I'm still going to try and figure that one out. I hope they prove me wrong, but I don't think that was the best move by Sweeney.
I just would love to see goalie Bob's reaction and his cute comment if you were to make that Jesus analogy to him, because I'm sure he would come up with a doozy. All right. What is this team in terms of Stanley Cup threat in 24-25? Where do we slide them in there?
I think I'd say they're almost they're where they finished off last season, maybe a little above that. I think they're a second or third round team right now. You never know. Things can happen during the season. They pick up somebody. People can overachieve. Yeah. Who knows? And obviously health and Swayman are going to be a big issue.
Yeah.
But I think they're in the mix. They're contenders. Are they elite contenders? I don't have them in that category yet.
No. Okay, that's fair. The Sick podcast, the eye test podcast with Pierre Maguire. You guys have been doing it for how
long? We started last November, and when the hockey season's going, we're on Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. So we go right through. It's been great. We get awesome guests, and it's great talking with Pierre. You know, Pierre, he's an encyclopedia of hockey knowledge. So it's always fun to be hosting a show with him. And yeah, we just started up again. Our summer hours, we're going to go once a week. It's looking like right now, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll be streaming live on YouTube on our channel.
Okay. Once a week in the summer, and then every day, 5 days a week, once the season starts, with Jimmy Murphy and Pierre Maguire, which is a hell of a lot of fun. I've enjoyed I was actually a guest down there, but then I loved checking out. That was fun, but it was also fun.
We had a lot of fun.
Scotty Bowman and
yeah,
a lot of these guys.
Scotty Bowman's amazing.
He's awesome.
He really is. It's unreal how sharp he is still.
It's ridiculous. Like I probably talk to him every 6-8 months, just once, random call on something. When the last call was about a book I was working on, and he'll come up with who was on the face-off in a game 6 in 1978. You're like, what? Yeah, Doug Jarvis. Like, I was gonna, go with, and I brought Jarvis off the bench because I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's great.
Anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
The eye test podcast, Jimmy Murphy Sick podcast. Check it out. It'll be live 4 o'clock today. Oh no, it was yesterday.
Oh, but it was yesterday.
You can watch it on YouTube. Sorry about that. You can watch it on your YouTube channel at any time, right?
Exactly.
At any time.
And dig up that one with Simmer. That's one of our
good. Dig out our conversation. That was like a month ago, maybe. All right, Murph, outstanding. Appreciate you updating us on the Boston Bruins. Have a great rest of the summer, great shows, and I'm sure we'll be chatting, lad.
All right, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers.